Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on turbotax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
Hey, Chicago. What do you say? Cubs gonna win today.
Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. We're going to do our second baseball playoff preview in a week. I guess that's what happens when they make the first round 3 days long. So with me, as always, is our national baseball expert, David Brown. David, have you been tipping pitches?
I personally have not. I've seen some allegations of tipping pitches, though. I don't know what I think of them, but... Yeah.
So we can start with the epic Mets Brewers. Really, with the epic Mets Brewers series. They had the last 2 games were great. Here's a little trivia for you. When Jackson Chourio hit 2 game-tying home runs late in Game 2, he became the first player to hit 2 game-tying home runs in the same playoff game since who?
I know the answer.
Okay,
should I answer?
This one? Yes.
The first Shohei Ohtani, Babe Ruth.
Yes, George Herman Ruth. That's pretty good company.
That's pretty amazing. That's it's funny that it went that long. That's between similar accomplishments.
And we saw a stat earlier in the postseason when the Astros were trying to rally from a 3-0 deficit to the Tigers, that teams in that position, trailing by 3 runs or more in the 9th inning, at that time were 1-538.
Ooh! And
the only time it had happened was the 2016 Cubs when they beat the Giants. That's great, and that's good. There is, however, only one team ever has blown a lead of 4 runs or more from the 7th inning on in a playoff game. And it was the 1929 Cubs, who had a 7-run lead in the 8th inning against the A's and lost the game.
That's crazy.
And I got one more crazy trivia thing for you. This is crazy. The Milwaukee Brewers, their win on Tuesday was the first playoff game they have won when they have trailed at any point since the 1982 World Series. For 42 years, if you got a lead on the Brewers, you won the game. No matter what. You could be 1-0 in the first, you were going to win.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what steadied the Mets when they got behind.
Yeah, I'm sure they knew that.
Right.
Don't worry, guys. These aren't the 82 Brewers. We'll be fine. Yeah, so the Mets rallied with 3 runs in the 9th off of Devin Williams, one of the greatest closers in the game today.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime overnight, our little pals over at John Boy. I don't know, what is a John Boy? John Boy is the one guy, the squeaky voice guy.
John Boy is a guy, but there's
he's
at
got
least one henchman.
Yeah, he started his little empire. Where he has a video that purportedly shows Devin Williams tipping his pitches by basically jamming his hand deeper into his glove, to do his 3-finger changeup grip, his Mordecai Brown grip. And then so the glove would tilt down a little bit when he was doing that, and it wouldn't change plane at all when he was throwing his fastball. And so some people are like, oh, that's gospel. They tipping his pitches. And other people like ESPN investigative reporter Don Van Atta are like, oh, that's bullshit. That's way too subtle. There's no way they would have seen that. And I don't know if they were at all, but my response to Don would have been pretty much all pitch tipping is subtle. If it was something obvious, that that guy's team would be like, hey, dumbass, you do this when you do this, everybody knows. A good example of a non-subtle pitch tipping was the Cincinnati Reds version of Ryan Dempster, who, when he would try to get ready to throw his splitter, everyone in the park would see it because he would basically he would literally be jamming his hand into his glove to do it. And that's it. And in the most Ryan Dempster thing ever, his solution wasn't to either figure out how to do that more subtly or just do it on most of his pitches. Just because then if you do it on a fastball, then people have to it doesn't do him any good to know you're doing that. He would do the stupid thing where he would flap his glove back and forth on his hand through his whole motion. But it was funny. I was like, what did you expect? I mean, this is not like in batting practice when the batting practice pitcher will show the grip and wave it over his head before he throws it. Curveball, gonna throw a curveball now. It's like, Don, what did you think it was going to look like? So before do you think there's any validity to the accusation?
Possibly, but I would say that we need to point out 2 things. Probably the most important thing about the whole thing, about the home run, other than hitting it, was that it was a changeup that was middle away a little, and that's where he was looking. And that wasn't the location wasn't going to be tipped off. Nope. It was well, is it a changeup? And what Devin Williams, I meant to look up what his percentage of changeups thrown is, but I bet it's really high.
Yeah.
So there's that. It was a terrible pitch, and Alonso is not a terrible hitter, and he hit it out. The other thing is, I mean, God bless him for. I'm not like a John Boy hater or anything, although he does some things. They do some things I don't like, but I appreciate anybody who puts that much effort into trying to analyze baseball. Blah blah blah. But from our standpoint, from the viewer's standpoint, from what he's looking at at a camera angle that is behind the pitcher. That it is much easier to see these things. Getting sort of to Don Van Atta's point about subtlety. It's much easier to see what he's talking about from second base.
Yeah.
There was nobody on second base. Yeah. There was nobody on second base for Alonso. So he's going to see something that is going to look different from his, and there's nobody to signal, well, this is a change. He's going to. So I would say it's probably bullshit. Was he tipping pitches? Maybe. Were the Mets in a position to do anything about this? I'm not sure. So,
yeah. Right. We could literally see the grip.
Yes.
So we knew he was tipping to us.
Right.
So we're not batting.
No.
The only reason I think it might have some validity is when you watch, because he goes through every pitch of all of those 4 guys batting. the Mets never seem fooled by they are on the changeup. Now they can't always hit it because his changeup is great and it moves all over the place. And the most obvious was 0-2. What's his name? The Brandon Nimmo was all over that thing. He laid back and he was not 0-2. He wasn't protecting against the fastball at all. He was thinking, and it could simply have been, if he gets you 0-2, he's going to throw you a changeup.
Right.
We're not looking at the glove or anything. But that, and then Pete was actually late on the changeup. It's because he's freakishly strong that he hit that thing out to right field. Now that you could also say that a 3-1 pitch, they basically told him if he down 3-1, he's not going to give you a fastball. He's going to throw you a changeup. So get ready for it.
Right.
Or it could be, that glove tilted down by a third of an inch, and I saw it. So I don't know. But the point about it, when it happens, it's subtle, is poor Yu Darvish. It was basically a head case for 2 years.
Right.
Because he was sure he tipped his pitches in the World Series against the Astros because they were all over everything. And he spent the next 2 years trying to change. He changed everything and he just screwed himself up. And part of that was his first year with the Cubs. And then it turns out that the way he was tipping his pitches was the Astros had a camera pointed up from behind, and just the one we saw, and they were banging on a trash can. That was how he was tipping his...
Come on, get with it. Where's your surveillance equipment?
Right. That's how he was tipping his pitch. So poor you. I always think about that. But yeah, as a Cub fan, I was glad to see the Brewers revert back to their what we just assumed was their destiny, which was not leaving the first week. I guess it was a tremendous success. They got to play the third game of one of those finally. Congratulations. And so we got to hear the radio call. It's all over Twitter. You get Howie Rose's radio call, which was great.
Yeah.
It's a big moment and he nailed it. He did a great job. And then really, somebody needs to go do a wellness check today on Bob Uecker. I mean, that should not happen to a 90-year-old man. He was, you could hear the wind get knocked out of him.
I had a chance to listen. I didn't hear the end of the game, but I heard the beginning of the game. And he made it seem like he was sick for the first couple games of the series and didn't really, I don't know if he didn't call any of it, but he didn't call most of it. That was my impression. And he was, he's like, oh man, it's just great to be back. And, he's at the point at 93 years old where it's always going to be great to be back. That's like the number one thing on anybody's list at that age. Hey, it's great to be alive. He didn't say that, but that's kind of how he felt. So I think you might be onto something, a definite wellness check. He's amazingly sharp. I mean, he's a little repetitive and, he has that thing in his voice where people get old and they kind of start to talk like this. But other than that, I mean, I hope I'm that sharp when I'm 93. But.
And to me, he's always the one redeeming feature of the Brewers.
Sure.
It's impossible not to love Bob Uecker. But yeah, and that ignited a whole debate again today about why can't baseball figure out a way for the hometown fans to get their hometown announcers? We're so big on the alternate feeds of everything, and why can't they just do? Why couldn't if ESPN's doing? Why can't ESPN Plus have? You could watch the regular feed with Boog. Although poor Cub fans, what would Cub fans do? Boog would have to do both. Boog would have to do both. The easy solution would be screw the TV.
Drive to left. There's a drive to left.
All right.
One would just be a half millisecond behind the other.
Yeah, and one he's super excited, and the other he's trying to keep it.
That put him to work, boy.
But the easiest thing would be screw the TV announcers. Can't you just have a feed where you just sync up the radio so we have to try to do it at home. Just sync it up, and then if the Cubs ever deign to darken the playoffs again, we can listen to Pat and Ron, and then a bigger part of the country in that fifth inning would get Zach Zaidman and be like, "What is this? This is awful."
You listen to this all the time.
Was this a contest winner? Did this guy get second place in a contest? Is that why he's doing the fifth?
Oh, let me do the because he does that silly.
God, and that's worse than anything he does. Is the exaggerated fake laugh from the second row anytime Pat says anything remotely funny?
Well, I think we could have this. We do have the MLB.TV broadcast does give us the option of fooling around with the audio portion of what we see, but these games are on ESPN. That's a different app,
Yep.
So that's the thing. And I was actually thinking about this when I saw a tweet from Don Orsillo talking about, I'm having a great time in the series, and I just said to him, it would be nice if you and Grant could have your own broadcast and just do it on Spotify, and then if MLB says anything, just say, well, we thought we had express written consent. It was, all along.
We gave it to ourselves.
Right. But they used to, and that made me think of something else, not to go down a remember this crap hole, but I remember, I don't think that 84 with the Cubs was like this, but in 83, you could watch either the NBC feed of the ALCS with the Orioles and the White Sox, or you could watch Channel 32 and get Drysdale and Hawkeroo.
Wow, really?
Yes, in the playoffs.
Wow.
I don't know if that would have extended into the World Series, but it was in the playoffs. So it was a thing that was done at one time.
So do we think somewhere there's a bootleg of like 30 seconds of silence from Hawk when Tito Landrum?
I was just thinking that. I don't know. I mean,
is that where he started it? Oh.
Drysdale probably would have talked over it, but I've never heard this broadcast. I don't know. We taped the NBC version, so we got Casas and Kubek. Casas, who was good in those days. But
yeah, like Cub fans in 84, you still got Harry, because Harry went over to do radio, because he did the middle three on radio anyway, and he just big-footed Vince to the middle three. I'm Harry. You're
Vince,
not.
go take a nap like every other game.
We're just going to switch. I'm going to do most of this. Okay, fine. You did miss Steve Stone, and so it was a whole playoff series without, for you youngsters out there.
Yeah. Yes.
There's nobody to give us tips. We didn't know what to do. Well, it sets up as if you didn't get enough Mets, Phillies, and Padres, Dodgers in the regular season. You get them again.
Right.
It seems odd to me, though, that baseball, you only seed the wild card round in effect,
right?
Because shouldn't the Mets, as the 6th seed, shouldn't they have gone to play the Dodgers?
Right. Yes.
In fact, I thought that's how they did it until they kept shoving the bracket at you, and they're like, well, it looks like it feeds directly in. So it's odd to me, but
it is.
If I were the Dodgers, I'd be really pissed that happens, because they have a much better opponent than the Phillies do this round.
Yes, they do. But I think that's something that can be changed, but I don't know. I'm trying to think of why they wouldn't do that. But.
Well, baseball's always had this weird. Remember Bud's explanation as to why they had to alternate the AL NL World Series home field advantage before, but then actually I think it was part of it to sell the stupid All-Star game gimmick of this time it counts. He's like, well, we have to book all these hotel rooms for the world. It's like, but
you don't have to do that.
Like that's not how this works. You still don't know who's going to make it until a few days before.
Right.
Well, but now there's only 2 possibilities instead of 4. It's like, no, it's not. And besides going into the playoffs, you would know who, this year, like if the Dodgers are in, they've got home field advantage. It didn't make any sense. And I kind of feel like that's the same thing about, it'll just complicate travel. Oh, will it? You've only got 2 National League teams. They got used to it. The poor Diamondbacks spent Monday hanging out at the park with their bags packed, trying to figure out if they were going to fly to Milwaukee or San Diego. And instead they just sadly put their bags back in their cars and went home.
Somebody's saving 10 cents somewhere. So that must be why.
It has to be. It's just strange. But baseball likes to do strange things. Well, that series was good. And then I think Padres Braves went about the way we thought. The Braves were compromised by having to play that doubleheader, but also just they would run out of players basically before the playoffs started, and the Padres smacked them around and sent them home.
I give them credit for getting to the playoffs at all with the quality of players that were hurt for the time that they were hurt.
I mean, they were
kudos to you.
Cubs didn't have that excuse. I mean, every team has a few injuries, but maybe that was the Cubs' problem. Maybe if some of the overpaid white dudes on their team had gotten hurt and they had to go out and find replacements for them, maybe they would have made the playoffs. But it didn't.
Maybe.
It didn't happen. And then over in the American League, I made the joke twice on the preview. It's time for good teams to play, and the Tigers. And the Tigers took care of the Astros in short order. My favorite part of that was the guy you affectionately like to call Tariq Scooby Dooble. He was pitching great, and he seemed to want to get hurt. He took a line drive off the hand, and he acted like he broke his hand. And then he had a phantom like back or leg injury. It was just trying to make the Tigers nervous. And they'd come out and look at him. He'd be like, "I'm fine." Like, okay, well, why were you just limping around the mound then? He just wanted to add a little drama, I guess.
Right. I lost my cool for a second. I'm fine now. It's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it does show that, in that you're only got to win 2 games. If you have a stud pitching game 1 and you win that game, then all the pressure goes on the other team. And the Astros kind of played like it. So, and it didn't help that Yordan Alvarez was on one leg. At least I think he had at least one leg. But I think they're real. If you're starting Jason Hayward in playoff games,
right,
and starting Victor Caratini at first base, things have gone terribly wrong.
The Astros were kind of bandaged together. They were. The Rangers had a really bad year, and the Mariners have like a pitching staff and nothing else going on. So they didn't have wonderful competition, but it was. I didn't think they were long for this world. I liked the Tigers in that round, and I might even in this one. I'm still thinking.
And then the other American League series was the plucky Royals against the Orioles. And the Orioles extended their playoff losing streak to 11 games.
Oof.
Now, you probably saw, because I tweeted this out. I know you voraciously consume my tweets.
I never miss it.
Did you see who the last Orioles pitcher to get a win in a playoff game is?
Yeah. Is it Jason Hamill?
No, he started the losing streak the next day.
Oh, okay.
But it's another Cub. Another World Series Cub. Pedro Strop.
Oh, Strop. I saw that tweet too, yeah.
So for Cub fans, we liked Strop. We never liked Hamill. So it was great that Pedro has the last win, and of course Hamill started the losing. So that just seems like a thing he would do. That's 12 years ago. It's been a long time for I mean, I know they took like 4 seasons off.
They did. Boy, did they.
And they had the weird wild card game where Buck wouldn't use Zach Britton because it was tied. Yeah, wouldn't want to use your best pitcher when it's tied. You wait until you lose, and then he's ready. But I mean, that's a team with a lot of talent that we all saw it coming. The last 2 trade deadlines, they've been very afraid to use their vast wealth and resources of minor leaguers to improve the big league team.
They did. This year, they used some of them. They might have had, I don't know if they had an opportunity to trade Jackson Holliday for Tarek Skubal, actually. That was kind of a rumor, but that would have been something.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they traded some decent prospects, and they just made horrendous trades.
Yeah, right.
They seemed like bad trades at the time. I'm not privy to all the information that their scouts are and all that kind of thing, but I'm like, really? Trevor Rogers, huh?
Yeah.
And it just didn't, most of them played really bad, honestly, the new guys. So they didn't really have, they had some significant injuries. They had a flat record for, I don't know, since June, I think.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they've been 500 since June. That's a long time. So you're right. We could kind of all see it coming. Although, the Royals still have, from their own version of taking lots of off seasons off, they still have lots of holes. they only have really 2 or 3 or 4 decent hitters in the lineup. They did improve their bullpen, but they also lost a couple guys to injury, and so they're not terribly deep. I would be surprised if they beat the Yankees, but it could happen, I guess.
They've got a guy named Bubich, which is fun.
I make fun of that periodically, yeah.
And the Mets have Butto, right?
They do. Oh, Butto and Bubich.
Butto and
Series.
Bubich.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. Somebody has to team those two up. That would be fun.
That'd be not safe for work.
Yeah, they go Bubich to Ursig. It's like they're like terrible creative names and they realize there's a real guy throwing like 100 miles an hour attached to that name, but still.
They sound like Michael Kay trying to say Andy Ibanez. And
now I watched it happen, but still later in the day when I looked at the crawl and it went by and it said, Ibanez 8th inning, 3-run double or whatever. I mean, it was like Raul.
Right, which one?
He was like 70 when he retired. How old is he? Oh, that's not right. I watched Andy Ibanez actually hit that. There's just some guys you will always associate with names, and Ibanez will always be Raul to me.
Right. I feel like all Cabreras are Orlando. Even Miguel.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty bold. So Jack Chirio, very good player, especially at 20. It's ridiculous. And, the opposite field home runs but I did think it was a little rich for Boog to drop the Miguel Cabrera comp on him, like during one of his at bats. You know who else was 20 years old when he made his playoff debut? Miguel Cabrera. Yeah. They're not. I got to tell you, Boog. They're not the same guy. That was Miguel Cabrera seemed 27 the minute he broke in to torment everyone.
Right.
And he didn't even. He was like a mid-season call-up that year, I think. Mm-hmm.
I believe that's more or less true, yeah.
It was like a Jack McKeon, this dude's too good to not have. Just give me, and I'll use him. And he played him all over, and it worked, because he was, 100 pounds less than he was at the end of his career. They don't even look like the same species, much less the same guy. But that's a little rich. Also, Boog's like, and they got him signed for a decade. It's like, well, yeah, but they're the Brewers, so that means in 5 years they will be trading him for four guys who aren't as good, because that's just what they'll do. Up until the home run, Pete Alonso had quite a series. Game 2, he could have beaten out a double play grounder that I think it might even scored a run. I think at least there was going to be a runner at third. He tripped over his bat and was nowhere to be seen in the picture.
No.
And then last night, how is this legal? He's going over to catch a pop-up, and some creepy Brewer fan literally reaches out and pushes the screen towards him. And then he drops the pop-up, and it's just nothing, because he didn't make contact.
Are the fan interference laws different with a screen?
Well, he didn't ever touch him, I guess, so there wouldn't be actually interference. But it was weird. You could just see it like coming out of the side.
Right. Like
I thought
science fiction.
I thought, well, it's nice of Eloy Jimenez to stop by and watch a game and fall into the screen. But
I have to touch the screen. I have to.
That seems like you shouldn't not be encouraging fans to like shove the screen out onto the playing field when a ball is.
Well, I think you almost feel like invincible. Like, oh, this is a barrier. I can stretch this out. It's not. I don't have to worry about stretching my hand over the fence, because it's not really. It's still behind the screen, which is where I belong.
And then there were, that if Pete hadn't come through there, that may very well have been his last at bat as a Met. He's a free agent, although it does seem like, what's his name? Their multi-billion-dollar Steve Cohen owner.
Steve Cohen
wants to keep him, but I think most Met fans, until he hit that, would have been more than happy to see Pete go. He hadn't had a big hit since May. And they're like, that's enough of this. Polar Bear, lifting weights during the home run derby only gets you so far. But now he's a Met hero forever. And who cares? As somebody pointed out in The Athletic, the Mets have they have all these iconic postseason moments for a franchise that doesn't make the postseason very much.
Right.
Like when they go, they do something memorable. But then they just take a bunch of years off when they just don't go. So, the Cubs for a long time were that way. They would rarely go, but their memorable things would all be tragic. But then we got one good postseason out of it, so we're fine. I guess we should look ahead at these series. It's supposedly why we're here. So I'm gonna also do the announcer pairings because that's always fun. In the American League, I was surprised at this. I would think that because the Yankees, when the Yankees are involved, they're always that we got to put a number one crew. But the number one crew supposedly for TBS is Brian Anderson and Jeff Francoeur.
Right.
And they're going to Cleveland. They're doing Tigers Guardians. That's fine. They're perfectly fine. Jeff's a little dull. Brian, I feel like he's doing a golf tournament most of the time, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they're doing Tigers Guardians.
He can get excited, and before that though, he sort of was sleepy.
Yeah. So what do we think about Tigers Guardians?
Well,
another divisional matchup.
The mighty AL Central. Maybe it's my association with the Twins podcast, but I've just kind of been waiting for the Guardians to overextend their bullpen all season, and they don't hit the ball. They don't hit a lot of home runs. They're a little better than they were last year at it, but they don't hit the ball really hard. They rely on a lot of duck snorts and weird things and luck. And I think the Tigers are suited for that. They have they got Scooby-Doo and they have a really good bullpen.
Yep.
I'm not sure else who's going to start games. I don't know if they're going to do all bullpen games or what, but that's easier to pull off in a 3-game series than it is 5. But I'll pick the Tigers in 5, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Guardians won. It wouldn't surprise me a lot, but I still tilt the field toward the Tigers.
This episode is brought to you by Love Hurts. Kiwi Kwan has had quite a career, from childhood roles in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and The Goonies to a recent Academy Award win for Everything Everywhere All at Once. But now Ki finally stars as a leading man in the film Love Hurts. Love Hurts is the perfect date night movie with its mix of over-the-top action, comedy, and a ton of heart. Love Hurts, only at theaters February 7th.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
For me, the Tigers. This is the best possible matchup for the Tigers because they're typically challenged to score a lot of runs, but they're going to play a team that is also challenged to score a lot of runs. So they come in relatively evenly matched. And once again, they have the best pitcher, assuming he doesn't get pelted with line drives again. But I haven't even seen the matchups. I don't know. So Saturday, all these games start on Saturday. He pitched on Tuesday, so it's 3 days rest. So is he going to pitch game 2, not game 1?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what's scheduled.
It would behoove the Guardians to win game 1.
Right.
Because if you let the Tigers jump on you and get game 1, and then all of a sudden Scooble pitches like he can in game 2, you're behind it right away. Yeah,
I like but the thing about that is, I believe if the I gotta look ahead to see how the days off fall, but Scooble, you could pitch him in game 5 too.
Yeah.
if there's enough time in between games. So that's the nice thing about him going in the second game is I think he would be available for game 5. So if there is one. Yeah, Reese Olson. Okay, so Olson, he had a pretty good year, but got hurt and then hasn't been quite on a roll like he was in the first half. But he's good, so he's got a chance to shut him down.
So the American League is taking Sunday off. So Scuba will actually pitch up with an extra day rest on Monday. But then they're going to play. So they play Saturday, Monday. Then they get another day off.
Wednesday. And Thursday.
And
then Saturday.
Game 5 is Saturday. So yeah, he could easily pitch 2 and 5. He gets all his days off there. So yeah, so Tigers Guardians are the first game on Saturday. The Royals and Yankees. The announcers for that are Bob Costas and Ron Darling. They have the early evening game, 5:30 our time. And we have yet to, we won't know, I guess, until tomorrow, Saturday morning, so whether they're going to try to tape poor Anthony Rizzo's fingers together. But don't you think that because Vinny Pasquantino was playing with a broken thumb, that Rizzo, now his Italian pride, he has to play? He can't let the other Italian play with a broken bone when he's got a couple of little bitty broken fingers.
Well, wait, it's twice as many fingers that are broken?
Yeah. But
I mean, that's his out. That's his out right there.
Well, a thumb equals 2 fingers, right? Very John Madden of me.
Yeah, really. Or some kind of awful sexual reference.
Well, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know. How did Rizzo hurt himself? Do you remember?
He got hit with a pitch. Which he always does. That's like his thing.
Right. He should have been ready for it.
Now, it is his right hand. So it's his glove hand. But it's also his bottom hand when he bats. Which I would think would be bad. I don't know. It is funny, though, that I'm obsessed with just because he's Anthony Rizzo. He's one of my all-time favorite Cubs.
Right.
He wasn't good this year.
No.
And he has an 80 OPS. And I can't imagine the Yankees are losing a tremendous amount of sleep over it. Well, are you going to be as bad as you were in the regular season? Maybe
we know what the floor is.
But he'd gotten hot. He was playing well for a few days before he got hit. So darn the luck. He was about to turn it around. So we'll see. I think if I'm the Yankees, as long as Juan Soto and Aaron Judge make it to the park, I'm pretty happy. I'm not worried about the other guys. We'll fill in around those two.
It's not exactly the same thing, but there's a similar lineup thing going on here. Because if you look at the rest of the Yankees lineup, it is not very intimidating.
No, it could be
Judge.
It could be the rest of the Yankee lineup could be the Royals lineup other than Bobby Witt.
That's and
all the other
Perez
guys are interchangeable. Yeah, right.
Yes.
And savvy.
He can run into one. And they do have Pasquantino back, and Pasquantino was pretty good. He wasn't great, but he was like 10% above average, league average. So, that is. You would still think the Yankees had an advantage, even reducing everything to that. But the Royals' chances will be they don't. You know what they do? They don't strike out a lot, and that's one thing compared to the rest of the league. It seems like they might. It seems like Witt and Sal would strike out a lot. I think Sal kind of does, but Witt is actually good at not striking out. So, you'd think, though, that they would just kind of pitch around those guys somehow and they'd be okay, the Yankees guys. And you would think that the Royals would do the same with Judge and Soto. So I don't know when it's 2 guys in the lineup. I don't know what you're risking. You're probably risking a little bit more by pitching around them, but
yeah.
I don't think nobody is very scary outside of those 4 hitters.
No. Obviously, the other key element of this series is that remember back in was it May or June when Yankees radio announcer John Sterling just decided, I don't want to do this anymore, and he retired.
Yeah.
And then they gave him a TV. And so one of the greatest on-field things ever was they bring out this huge box, this like 85-inch LG TV box. And he looks at it like, this won't even fit in my car. What am I supposed to do with this? Guess who's back to do the playoffs on the radio for the Yankees?
That's baseball, Susan.
Yeah. John Sterling's back. And I do, for baseball fans who have never experienced John Sterling and Susan Waldman together in a booth, you have maybe one final chance. You need to find a way to listen to it.
Right.
They're so bad that I can't get enough of them.
Yeah.
I find them somehow charming. And I've always enjoyed listening to them. And I also think to myself, God, I'm so glad they're not the announcers for my favorite team. Because I can just take a little dose of it and go, that's kind of neat, and then ignore them.
Right.
But yeah. So there's a lot of Broadway references. A lot.
Yes.
John loves it, and Susan has sung on off Broadway, apparently.
Right.
She will just sing the anthem sometimes before games.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Very versatile.
John's left to babble to himself for about 10 minutes while she tries to make her way up to the booth. They're both he's in his 80s and she's in her 70s. And
yeah.
He misses a lot of plays. He can't see as well anymore. He refuses to wear glasses, and he can't see. So he'll think it's something. Aaron Judge a home run, and you realize that that was a fly out in front of the warning track. But he's excited. Right. He's halfway through his ridiculous home run call, and Susan is always reading things, so she doesn't even look up half the time.
Right.
She's either reading notes she wrote, something somewhat interesting but not really interesting, or she's literally reading the game notes that they're provided, and then she doesn't see it either. It's amazing. They're great.
It is it's a very New York, semi-stereotypical New York booth. It seems like your aunt and your uncle are calling the game.
Yeah. Well, as Jimmy Traina calls him, Ma and Pa Pinstripe. It's always been his nickname for them. Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously it's 3 out of 5, anything can happen, but this really feels like the Yankees have to win this and move on.
Well, from the standpoint of they haven't, from the standpoint of the continuing disappointment that the Yankees have been, I mean, for a team that contends most of the time, and they haven't won a World Series since 2019 or 2009, and that's a long time now. It's 14 years. I mean, it's a long time for them. So it's it's an important series. That's the thing that sort of prevents me from going all in, even somewhat emotionally, on the Royals. The Yankees really kind of need to win for them. The Royals are playing with house money at this point, and the Yankees they've got to be serious about being World Series contenders, and you can't really do that if you don't get to the championship round. So,
yeah, because the last time they had a good chance was when Jose Altuve hit the home run off of Roldis, and then wouldn't let anybody rip his jersey off to reveal the little buzzer that he had that was connected to the bangy on the trash can. But they're the Yankees. I can't engender any sympathy for them.
Oh no.
27 world championships. It's like, well, do you need more, really? But they've been invited to the AL Central Invitational now. For their chance to, if you don't win the pennant, when the only obstacles are the Royals and the winner of Cleveland and Detroit, you might as well just give it up. See, over in the National League, the early series is on Saturday. The 3:00 game is those plucky Mets. That was fun. I enjoyed it. I'm glad to beat the Brewers. Now go away. You're annoying. I've never liked your franchise, and I only borrow you when you play the Cardinals or the Brewers, I guess.
Well, that's convenient.
And you did it, and now go away against the Phillies, a team that I like to think is the Phillies are what the Cubs should be. They have a lot of the players the Cubs should have, and they run they build their roster the way the Cubs should build theirs and refuse. Mets Phillies, that is did I decide that one? That one's Adam Amin, AJ Przinsky, and Adam Wainwright.
Waino.
Jesus.
I like Waino's broadcast. I know you can't like it, but I think he's a natural.
Yeah, I'm sure if I didn't hate him, I might
Sure.
like him.
I know you can't help it.
Yeah. I don't want to help it.
No, that either. The Phillies, the owner, I think I heard him say when they won the division, "I want my effing trophy back." That was his reaction to winning the NL East. So, and he wasn't talking about the NL East trophy, whatever that is.
Yeah, I like that. That's how everybody's owner ought to be, and there aren't very many of those guys.
You would think. You would think that they all make enough money that it could be like that, kind of. But there are way too many that aren't. I guess not everyone is going to be like that, but we need 20 out of 30.
I feel like the Phillies are the best team, like in baseball, but they haven't played like it for a while now. Kind of like the Orioles. Just they played great. They got to build a big lead, and they were fine after that, but just kind of fine. And
right.
Maybe you just turn it back on. But it does baseball. That there's a lot of examples of teams that played okay the second half of the season, and then they went home.
Right.
I think a lot of it depends on what's going on with Bryce Harper's elbow.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not just a great player. He seems to rise to the occasion in big moments. And if he's reasonably healthy, they become really hard to beat. And then they have Cub fans. They have our large adult son, Kyle Schwarber, who we still can't believe was ever allowed to leave. But they have him, and they have everything you want, right? They've got the top of the rotation pitching, and they've got more than one guy. They've basically got 4 this year.
Right.
They get too many. You get too many starters. You only need 3 in the playoffs. They gave the parts of their bullpen away that they didn't want to the Orioles. That didn't work out so great for the Orioles.
No.
And then they went 7-6 against the Mets in the regular season. So could be a coin flip. I don't know. I feel like the Mets this is when it catches up with them.
Right.
Your pitching does start to wear out at some point, and I think,
how much juice can you get out of Grimace?
Yeah. Well, and what is Grimace juice?
I like the Grimace shake. Did you ever get a Grimace shake?
Is it grape or just purple?
It wasn't very grape if it was grape.
Yeah.
It certainly was purple. I don't know if it intended to be grape.
No, I don't. It's not like he's a big grape. He's just kind of grape colored.
No, but that kind of plum, okay, it could be a plum or some other.
That's true.
Purple fruit.
He's an eggplant. Wouldn't that be a tasty shake?
Oh.
Can I have one of those eggplant shapes? Oh, yes. Absolutely. That's great.
The Mets were, as it turned out, kind of lucky to beat the Brewers.
Yes.
In the end. So even though they got the early advantage, but while I wasn't really expecting the Orioles to turn it back on because it had been so long, I think the Phillies just I don't know if it's because of Harper or their other players or the demands of the fans or whatever, but I think they're just a little more capable of flipping that switch.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna favor them in this series too.
Well, and they've got more good players, especially in the. We'll get to it with the Dodgers too in the next series, but the Phillies are just a lot. It's not just that they're deep; they've got a lot of really good players, and so Bryce cannot have a huge game, and somebody else can, and they can still beat you. So
they could get a good game out of Brandon Marsh or something like that, or I wouldn't expect Nick Castellanos, but it could happen. And JT Realmuto. So, and Bohm had a really good year. Stott's a good player. Trey Turner's one of the most talented players in the league. They are still stacked.
Yep.
So Wheeler is the best pitcher who's not, he's 1A if that for Cy Young. So,
and then the other series is Padres Dodgers, and so that's your Joe Davis, the excitable Joe Davis, John Smoltz, the unexcitable John Smoltz. You'd think they'd even each other out, but they don't really. It's kind of like they're doing different broadcasts. Joe is doing the one where everything's exciting and there's a lot to scream about, and John is doing the one where I got to find a few things to bitch about, and then that'll be it.
I wonder if that was the idea when they were paired, that, these guys complement each other well in theory. But the Dodgers are kind of like a West Coast Yankees. They're kind of hanging around, being great, and it hasn't translated to lots of postseason success. I mean, they won the World Series. It's now 4 years ago, so it hasn't been that long.
And it didn't even count as that little.
And nobody thinks
that little short season neutral site thing.
I mean, it certainly doesn't count exactly the same way. I might give them a little more credit, but than that.
It's funny. It may have been the hardest World Series to win, they get no credit for it. And I'm for it. I'm for giving them no credit. I'm just that kind of a guy. I don't know why. I don't hate the Dodgers. The Cubs beat them to win the pennant. I should have an affection for them.
Sure.
But I don't like them. They beat the Cubs the next year. Screw them.
I'd like to see Shohei participate in a World Series. So
yeah, I don't know. Maybe you haven't heard this because this is not, people don't talk about it. Shohei's finally in the playoffs.
Oh, wow, that's great.
And then there's all, I love the rumors can't help themselves. If they get to the NLCS, he might pitch. Well, who said that? Well, nobody. I think it'd be cool, so I'm just going to say it. Okay, well, that's great. Because the Dodgers aren't going to do it, are they? Well, probably not, but we might. Then we get to the NLCS. If they get to the NLCS, then if they get to the World Series, he's going to pitch. But I don't think he's not going to pitch. Although they sure need it. That's their glaring deficiency is that their starters are either hurt or no good.
That's more or less where that rumor came from. The dire need of the Dodgers to have Shohei pitch, or somebody.
And it's funny. So the Padres basically built their pitching staff around. Well, AJ probably just kept adding relievers all season. Just kept this guy's good. Let's get him. And both teams basically are going to approach games the same way, which is let's see what we can get out of our starter and then we'll turn it over. But the Padres actually have good starters to turn it over.
You do.
The Dodgers don't. But they're basically both going to employ the same strategy. One, because they just want to, and the other because they don't have any choice.
Yeah.
To me, it's so the Padres, though, you go through their lineup, there's a lot of talent in that lineup, but you also look and they're playing Donovan Solano at first base.
Good against left-handed pitching. Yeah. Although the Dodgers have any of those, I don't know.
I worry about him when somebody has to throw the ball to first base. It's like, oh God, that's Donovan Solano over there. It was kind of like looking up and Gary Sanchez is catching in Game 3 of a playoff game. Like, I honestly didn't think he was their backup catcher. I just assumed he was the third catcher in a DH. And I'm like, wonder who their backup catcher is, and it's him. And it's like, oh God.
I believe that was true for a portion of the season. Well, so
they may have another catcher, but they wanted his bat, I guess.
Yeah, right.
And he's not the reason they lost, but it's like, good Lord, he can barely move back there.
That was a topic of a conversation when I was listening to the Brewers, just to jump back to them for a second. It's like, Gary Sanchez is behind home plate. And you could hear the, that's great. That's really great. Yeah. There's something else to overcome. They didn't say that, but that was what they were communicating.
I mean, he's almost as mobile back there as former Cub star Josh Fegley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Josh, he was the first Cub to bring back the catching on one knee thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure he said it was because, I can catch the low strikes better, but really it's because I can't squat anymore. My knees don't do that. Yeah. I'm just going to rest. I'm surprised he wasn't sitting you can't call it Indian style anymore, but cross-legged.
Right.
Because it was comfortable. He's just sitting behind home plate and can't move to the right or the left. That was kind of the Gary Sanchez style last night. Yeah, but I mean, I guess they've got Xander back at shortstop, which is a little shaky. But then he's got Manny next to him, It's like, is there a way the shortstop can just let the third baseman field everything? Is there a Manny, could you cover second on this too? Like, what? No, you're closer. I can't make it over there. As much as I think the Padres are fun, and when you see those games in San Diego and the fans are going nuts, it still just pisses me off because I remember 40 years ago, just
cheaters.
And it's like, enough with the fucking brown. I thought you got rid of that. Why is it back? It's like, I remember Len Casper talking about how cool those uniforms were. It's like, what? No, they're literally, it's brown and yellow. It's, it's PP and doo-doo. That's their colors. Why? Well, because the San Diego Missions with that's what the Friars would wear. Yeah, whatever. Stupid.
Screw your history.
Yeah. So I'm going to it thinking it'd be kind of neat if the Padres win, and I'll start watching the games. Be like, Shohei, why don't you just hit 4 homers,
right? And
then get rid of them. That would be fine.
Well, that just might happen. I leave it open to possibility. I would pick the Padres to win this, and confidently so. If it wasn't Shohei's first year, but I don't know. I can see the narrative going that way too. It's like, oh, he got the playoffs and he lost, so he's gonna. People are always looking for ways to drag him down too. So
I feel like it's gonna go for him. It's gonna be one of two. He's either gonna struggle, and everybody's gonna be, see, he's not worth $700 million, or he's just going to destroy the Padres. And I think if he made me bet, I would bet more on destroy than struggle, because
he might make you bet, according to some people.
Because that's true. Or Ipe. What's Ipe up to? I don't have to tell you this because you're the baseball expert, but Shohei's really good.
Yes.
There's a reason that everybody goes goofy over the guy. It's amazing. And I said it a couple of weeks ago, and I'll just say it again. This is his Tommy John rehab year. And he just decided, I guess all I'm going to do is hit. I'll just hit 50 homers and steal 50 bases. Anybody ever done that before? No. I'll just do that. On when I'm not, rehabbing is like a full-time thing for these pitchers,
right?
To get back from Tommy John, and he did all that. And by the way, I'm just going to win the MVP in the National League. Mm-hmm. You can't make a big enough deal out of that. I don't think. It's amazing.
I don't either, but I do like to account for him. And this is it's gonna sound silly, but he didn't play any defense. But I mean, he didn't. So it's not it's like, what else do you want him to do? Well, I mean, I guess it would have been nice if he could have played the outfield too, but then you wouldn't have that argument. But I'm not going to hold it against him, because what he did at the plate was just so ridiculous that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to guess, this is year 1 of a 10-year deal with the Dodgers. I'm going to guess that by year 4, he's their right fielder.
Yeah, and not a pitcher?
Yeah, right.
Right.
One more. He's another arm injury away from, just go play that. We'll get your arm good enough for you to throw, not to pitch. And
I could see,
because he's done it twice now. He's already got the 2. The third, it's the end of it.
Right. I could see maybe him morphing into something else, which is kind of like how I always hoped that his name's slipping who's the guy who played for the Cubs?
Brooks Kieschnick.
Yes. Something like that, where he's like an everyday outfielder mostly, or sometimes a DH. But also a relief pitcher sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that. If he get to the point where they think, if he comes back from this and they just feel like he can't make 30 starts,
right?
That they try it next year. He's gonna be a starter next year. Then maybe a year or 2 down the road, they're like, all right, the best use of you is mostly as a hitter, but then it's like having an extra awesome relief pitcher on our roster,
right?
And I also like, when Joe Madden first got to the Angels, because the DH rule wasn't in both leagues, and I still am convinced that Joe just bullied baseball into the DH and the pitcher are not the same thing, because you did that one time in the All-Star game, and that's the new precedent, and that's the rule.
Right.
Shohei would leave the mound and go to right field.
Right.
And, other than the fact that you always worry his elbow's going to explode, he was a good outfielder. And we know how fast he is. And he's got obviously has a great arm. He'd be a great right fielder. But this allows him to, next year, it'll allow him to do both. And we want to see that because we don't get to see it. And it's not going to last that long. So we're just going to bask in it while it lasts. If he made me bet money on it, I would pick the Padres.
Right.
But I think this will be this should be a really fun series. It's two good teams and they don't like each other very much. And although speaking of that, was the whole Jesse Winker thing, was it just because him and Willie Adames were bitching at each other on third base in game 1? Or was there more to it than that?
I don't know for a fact, but I know this.
I was just going to say, Brewers fans booed him like he used to manage the team.
Well, I mean, he used to play for him, and then he pooped out and had a couple of years where injuries and I suspect off the field stuff were not making him as good of a player as he had been or could have been. I think that stuff is where it started.
It just seemed
like he was still a Brewer.
It seemed like it went from 0 to 100 and they were. I don't know what they were yelling at. They were literally yelling at each other, which was kind of fun. And then after that, it was just he got booed all the time.
Right.
It's like,
I didn't hear what they were yelling, but just that I saw it like you. So
I hope he was yelling at Adames that the red shoes and the red sleeve look ridiculous with the Brewers uniforms. It's like, what's with the clown shoes? They don't matter.
Did he bring those over from the Nationals?
No, Willie has the one with the red shoes and the red sleeve.
Oh, he does?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's like, that looks dumb. Don't do that. It's almost as dumb as Marcelo Ozuna's stupid, like, glow-in-the-dark arm thing that he always
Well, that is, I believe, I don't like Marcelo Ozuna, but is that not a Venezuela thing?
No, this isn't like Wilson Contreras had the Venezuelan flag one that they wouldn't let him wear.
Marcelo Ozuna's from the Dominican Republic.
Marcelo's is like that, like, glow-in-the-dark thing.
Yeah,
that's not anybody's
Republic.
flag.
Red is one of their colors, but I don't know. Yeah,
this looks dumb. Like, I'm glad baseball loosened up the, you can wear different shoes and stuff, but it's like, that's just, it doesn't match.
Find
a cooler pair of shoes than that, Willie. Sorry,
make it mean something.
Well, he's gone too, so maybe he's already. You think he's going to sign with?
Stop it! Sorry,
that's fine.
The Tampa Bay Times wondering where their subscription money is. It is, too.
Is it? He's speaking of that. No, but he's a Brewer free agent, which means he's leaving. And maybe he's going to go sign with the Reds or somebody. So he's already stocked up on the red shoes.
No, just because the Reds have Tito Francona as a manager, that doesn't mean they're going to start signing people.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Yeah. So, all right, we'll give your 2 cents on that, and then we've got some front office and managerial stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Well, Dodgers, Padres.
Dodgers, Padres. I don't want to pick against Shohei because I love Shohei, but and Mookie. I'm going to pick the Padres. I suspect they're the best team in the National League right now. I think the 3 best teams in the National League are playing in these series. The 3 best teams in the league, major leagues, are in the National League. So, and the one that isn't is the Mets.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
which makes me think baseball should just reseed with irrespective of leagues.
Someday, maybe, but we still have American League, National League identities, so
we can't even get them to follow the seeding from round 1 to 2. How the hell are we ever going to get them to throw everything up in the air and just start over? They're never going to happen.
Some of it is this: they haven't seen the truth yet. Some of it is they don't want to see it.
Well, the leagues have never meant less. There's everybody plays everybody. There's a DH all around. The leagues.
Everybody plays everybody every day. There's always an interleague game.
Yes.
Every day.
Yeah. There's maybe that's what I was going to say. There's always an interleague game, but it doesn't matter anymore. Those are just a construct. American League, National League.
Yes.
Although we did get good news on the uniform front. The All-Star game next year. Yes, the 2 things. The one thing that bothered me more than anything with the uniforms, I don't care that they're made out of crappy material or that the pants split. I don't care. the 2-inch letters on the back of the uniform drove me nuts. And they're gone starting next
Who's
year.
that? Who is that?
But in the All-Star game next year, everybody's going to get to wear their own uniforms again.
Yeah.
Thank God. The idea that they're still going to do the stupid like National League, American League like things for during the workout
Derby.
day and the Derby, and the Derby was the one place they actually let the guys wear their real uniforms.
Well, when they do the Derby,
yeah, they're going to
it
switch
will
back.
it will be their uniforms.
But the idea that wearing those in the game, we're selling more of those. It's like people are going to buy those or they're not. Like they're either going to see the workout tops and go, "Oh, that's cool, I want to get that,"
Yes.
or they're not. Showcasing it for 3 hours wasn't helping sell it; just making the players look dumb. So
In fact, I would say that it hurt it because all of the discourse about it was this sucks.
Yeah, it made people mad at those things, and they were less likely to buy it. You're right. Yeah. So the big news in off the field in baseball is that the Reds have a new manager, and it's not David Ross, much to my chagrin. The only reason I wanted Ross to get that job is I think he would be bad at it, and it would help the Cubs because they went out and got the best guy they could find. They got Tito Francona.
Yes.
So his retirement, which he didn't ever call a retirement,
right?
He just said his time in Cleveland. He was going to take some time off, and he took a year. He's back, and he's managing the Reds. And I couldn't resist it. I was looking through. I just you saw the Terry Francona was trending, so I clicked on. I was reading through some tweets, and there was some Red fan who's like, "There's no way they're going to go out and get Terry Francona and not spend." And I laughed. Yes. I even tweeted a laugh because that was all Cub fans last year when the Cubs got Craig Counsell, and they didn't. And there's no effing way the Reds are going to either. So that is your big congratulations. That's your big acquisition, and he's a really good manager. But he's going to have to do with that same roster because they're done now. They just washed their hands of the offseason. Said, all right, see you at Goodyear, wherever the hell they train.
That was Jeff, my supervisor at Locked On. He's at Locked On Podcasts. So, and he does Locked On Reds, and I couldn't agree with you more and him less on that assertion about Tito.
Oh, that really was him. That was the guy I made fun of. Oh, that's good.
Yes.
I like that. I just thought it was some random Reds fan.
No, a specific one.
That's good.
But I think he's hoping way too much. I mean, just look at now. It begs some questions. Like when Tito was at Cleveland, I guess he didn't mind how the Dolans used to not spend money.
I guess,
and he's going to manage whatever he's got, and I think it being in Ohio and him having been there, and there being some, he's got Ellie De La Cruz and Hunter Green. So he's got some tools, some pieces, some good players. But, if you thought the Dolans didn't spend money, just wait till the Castellinis don't spend it.
Yeah.
So
just wait till Bob Jr. shows up on opening day and does the whole, what are they going to do? Go root for a different team?
Go root for the Guardians?
No, the greatest. The owners rarely say the truth out loud. And he did.
Right. And that was like that's the one thing of all the things you shouldn't say out loud. That's the first on the list.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, assuming Terry's health is okay because he keeps having weird things keep happening to him. And he rides that weird little scooter around and he crashes that thing into things occasionally.
As long as they don't steal it.
He's less, in a previous era, you'd have to worry about him getting bit by Shotzi in some kind of freak accident. That I don't think can happen anymore. I wonder if you're like an Orioles fan right now and you're like, oh, he was interested in managing again? Huh. Well, we got Brandon Hyde. I guess that's fine. Nobody thinks Brandon Hyde's a bad manager, but usually when your team flames out in the playoffs 2 years in a row, that's the guy who pays the price.
Right.
Not the players or not the front office that is afraid to add really good players to a really good team. It'll be interesting to see. The Reds do have talent. They also have some big holes in their roster that they also don't seem all that interested in fixing. And so maybe the whole idea, I'm sure, is that Terry, with his managerial brilliance, will just work around those deficiencies and they'll win. And they don't have to fill those holes. And that only goes so far. Good managers can help, but they can't get outs.
Good managers help more if the players are better.
Right. Yeah, and also in the Central, I neglected to bring it up when we talked on Tuesday, but Cardinals did a very weird thing where they basically said John Mozeliak is leaving after next year.
Just not yet.
So we're happily going to have a lame duck year where he just gets, and we already know his successor, Chaim Bloom, is going to take over. He's just going to be in the way for a year. That'll be fun.
Right. And not only that, we're not going to do a lot of free agent buying.
No, we're not spending, the payroll's not going up. In fact, we're getting rid of Paul Goldschmidt, which actually isn't going to hurt him because he wasn't very good. We don't know where we're one of those teams who our TV money is in peril, and that we were relying on that to fund a lot of this crap, and now we don't know how much or if any of it we're going to get.
But that's okay because we're not going to spend it anyway, even if we got it.
And they haven't fired Oliver Marmol yet. And the only reason people think they might do that is because little Skippy Schumacher is available, and he's destined to be the Cardinal manager someday. And a lot of people think it might happen, but they gave Marmol an extension during the season, so it's unlikely that they're going to move him. And I still think that Ollie gets fired 10 minutes after Yadi Molina tells somebody that he wants to manage.
Basketball season's over, baby.
That's right. But I have a feeling Yadi is going to wear basketball shorts while he's managing the Cardinals. Because they're more comfortable than having to try to squeeze the pants back over his big ass. He's just gonna he'll have the jersey on untucked over basketball shorts and still wear spikes. It'll be a nice look when he comes out to change pitchers. And he's probably
that sounds like a Chicagoans uniform during the winter.
That's what Praz wears to every Cub game. And I also think Yadi is probably not, he's not going to want to wear a cap. So he's going to wear the full catcher's mask, but just propped up on top of his head, not pulled down, because that would be ridiculous. He's not catching. It's just going to sit there like on his forehead as he comes out. Like, Skip, do you really need to wear the chest protector? It's just more comfortable. Besides, all the balls are stuck to it. I just kept it.
Yadi, this is a press conference.
It's a press conference. He probably will pull the mask down. Be serious.
All the balls are stuck to it. I heard that.
Yeah. Amazing that was people just laugh that off. Like, oh, that's hilarious. It's like, no, the catcher is covered in pine tar, and every time a pitch comes in, he just wipes more pine tar on the ball, and he actually got caught doing it, and nobody cared because it was Yadi.
The sticky stuff is coming from inside the catcher.
Yeah. Now that's the thing that the Orioles didn't get with Trevor Rogers that they needed, was the sticky stuff, because that was the last time he was good, was when he could load up the ball with the sticky stuff. And I think he struggled after they got rid of the sticky stuff, and then he got hurt. Right. And I think everybody thought, well, he's just not coming. It's slowly coming back from time. His spin rate, as all the magic cameras will tell you, is never recovered. Yeah. That's because if
only you scouted for the Orioles.
Yeah, two guys. Only advice would be don't get Tommy Nance and don't get Trevor Rogers. That'd be the only two. That'd be the extent of my knowledge. Two guys who were terrible after the sticky stuff went away. And then the other front office move was the Giants just decided that Buster Posey should be their president of baseball. And at his press conference, he basically said, I got to hire a general manager because I don't know how to do all this stuff. And I frankly, I don't want to do a bunch of it.
Farhan, what are you doing?
It is funny. Honestly, that might have been their best possible move, would have simply been to demote Farhan, because like Farhan is a GM. Like that's right. He was a baseball president who was a GM. All he wanted to do was like check out the waiver wire every day. He would make a trade every day if somebody would let him.
Right.
And what he was bad at was like the big picture stuff. Right. And like the players didn't like him. He didn't, the players think they want like I was going to explain everything to him until the guy explains it to them and they don't like it. And they had one winning season in the 6 years he was there. Of course, they won 107 games that year. It was the year that all of his little like micromanaging stuff worked. Right. Like every platoon that he put together worked. And their bullpen was great that year because of the thing. They also had Buster Posey having an MVP season and then retiring, which didn't help.
Right.
But they're switching over to Buster. And it was funny. It's one of those things where it was becoming so obvious that you didn't want to believe it. That it seemed like this is too obvious. So the last couple weeks of the season, the Giants basically had told Farhan, like, you probably should see if we can get Matt Chapman signed to a contract extension. And so Farhan was talking to Boris, and it wasn't happening. And Buster went and talked to Chapman, and they basically like drew up the deal. And then Buster showed it to Farhan, and Chapman showed it to Boris. And they're like, fine, you want to do this, we'll do it. And everybody thinks there's too much money for Chapman. So Boris was more than happy to do it. It's like 1 year too much and like $60 million too much for Chapman, who's a nice player, but And everybody's like, everybody's like, Buster, why did he do that? Like, I know he owns like 1% of the team and he's on the board, but he doesn't have any like formal role in the front office. And they just waved it off like, oh no, it was a relationship thing. Like, well, did he know Matt Chapman before this? Well, not really. Well, where's the relationship? And it's like, no, well, he basically had told, is it Greg Johnson? That's the president of the board and the guy the majority owner of the Giants. He basically had told him, I think I'd like to be the president. And he's like, okay. And they just didn't announce it. And Farhan apparently knew it for like the last week of the season that he was out, but he did he played the good soldier, and he did the end of the, he did a press conference like the last day of the season, and he did all that other stuff, and then he got fired.
Yeah, I based on all that we know about, like, Buster has not had any jobs other than baseball catcher.
Yeah.
And, I don't know that this is going to work. I think we might end up regretting giving all those resources to a third baseman who's 30 now, isn't he?
Yeah.
How old is Matt Chapman? I mean, he's a great player. And he's a very good leader in the clubhouse. Yeah. And he's, but still, I mean, he's been in the league. This is 8 years now. And he's 31 going on 32. Yeah. So.
Well, and it's funny. They had a lot of leverage with him. Like, he really liked living in the Bay Area because he liked it when he played for the A's and he wanted to stay. And he really liked playing for Bob Melvin because he played for Bob Melvin with the A's and they get along. And he fashions himself to be like a modern day Matt Williams, and Matt Williams was his third base coach, and like they were staying, they weren't getting rid of those guys.
Right.
And it's like, why with all this leverage did you still end up having to pay him that much money?
Right.
Like, yes, the deal makes sense to keep him. They don't have a third base prospect coming up who was going to bump him out of the way, and he still plays. I was wrong about him in the offseason. He was connected to the Cubs a little bit, and I'm like, I know all the batted ball stuff looks great, but he doesn't produce. And I've heard his defense has slipped. Well, his defense hadn't slipped at all. He's amazing at third base, and that will age relatively well with him. And he had a decent year at the plate. He's a good player. Every team should want him, but it just seemed weird that if that was your audition for the job, overpaying Matt Chapman right away probably shouldn't have been like, oh hell, he's got it. He's great at this. That'll be good. So we'll see. And now they have to hire a GM. And then the one issue you have with trying to hire a GM is you can't hire a GM from some other team. You have to hire like an assistant GM from some other team because the other teams aren't going to, unless you can get a team will just let a guy go. It's not, you're the president. So you're filling a GM role, which means any other GM that's not a step up. Teams don't have to let their guys go. You'd like to think they have somebody identified as part of this whole move, but who knows? They may be, we'll figure it out. That's always great. We'll figure it out.
It does seem very seat of the pantsy.
Yeah. And if you're Bob Melvin now, you're like, okay, well, how long am I here for? He didn't hire me. People think I'm a hell of a guy, and I've been a good manager in the past, but he didn't hire me. So who knows? So one of the things they were talking about, former Giants, Buster's old teammates, really didn't like Farhan because they thought that Farhan and Gabe Kapler, not Gabe Kaplan, that would be ridiculous. Why would
up your nose with a rubber hose?
Why would Mr. Cotter have anything to do with this? They felt less welcome because when he went in the Giants clubhouse, they had taken down a bunch of the murals of the 3 World Series teams.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabe had actually talked about it at one point. And what Gabe said was, look, those guys are legends. They're always going to be legends here. The Giant fans are never going to forget them, but none of us were here for this. And we kind of feel like we're celebrating. We're like, hey, look at all this cool stuff that happened. We didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
And they were kind of like, we're going to promote, they put stuff up with the current players and other stuff. And I think they felt like they were doing something like, instead of being, look at these frauds, they act like they had something to do with it. They didn't. And then the players got mad. You damned if you do and damned if you don't. They took the stuff down and the old players got mad. No, you don't want us around. Like, well, yeah, we really don't really want you around that much because you're just hanging out. But it's not like we hate you guys. We just weren't here for it.
Right.
Well, now Buster can put the murals back up because he's in all of them. So that's fine. But it is weird how athletes could be so sensitive to the stupidest stuff. And as soon as they started complaining about that, I was like, well, that's what you're mad about?
Right.
When I went in the clubhouse, I'm not on the wall anymore. It's like, you don't work here anymore.
Right.
You're not employee of the month. You don't get your plaque on the wall. So last thing I want to talk to you, I'll let you go because Jed Hoyer gave his State of the Cub press conference on,
how are they doing
on Tuesday. He claims they're in an amazing position, set up for success like you wouldn't believe.
He's right. I don't.
It's like other teams are envious of the position we're in. What, second place, 10 games out? Not able to get one of the 6 best records in the National League to crawl into the play. That's what they're envious of? And he made a lot of Cub fans mad with a rambling answer. Patrick Mooney, God bless him, asked him the same question 3 times. It's phrased different ways to try. Almost like after he answered it the first time, Patrick was like, do we want to try this again, Jed? Give this another shot because you just made everybody mad. And then a third time he throws it in at the end, which was basically, you don't have any stars on your team. Do you think you need stars to win? You're going to go out and try to find one, to go with these good players you have, get a difference maker. And Jed's basic answer was, and I was going to pull it up to read it, but I feel like I know it. He basically said, nobody knows who's going to be a star from year to year. They come out of nowhere. These 5 WAR players, I mean, our projections, there were like 13 of them this year around baseball, and we only had 3 of them. Or 5 or whatever it was. It's like, well, your projections clearly suck because most fans can point to teams and go, this guy's a great player. This is a great player. This is a great player. They don't just come out of nowhere. And what they really don't do is, it's not some guy who's been like aggressively average for 3 years is all of a sudden a star. Like those, you can see those guys coming. And the other thing he said was, because it was funny the way he phrased it. Craig Counsell basically said, we need to start trying to build 90-win teams around here. Trying to just scrape into the bottom of the playoffs is not what the Cubs should do. And at one point, Jed actually said, well, what Craig meant by that was, and I laughed out loud when he did it, but he actually, what he said almost upped the stakes was,
right.
We should build a team that can do that multiple years. Like, you should get to the point where you're winning 90 plus every year, which I'm all for. But my problem is I don't think Jed has any idea how to do that, because he's like, our numbers said that we only projected 3 90-win teams in the whole league. It's like, well, your numbers aren't very good. I mean, there were no 100-win teams for the first time. Right. So maybe, but he basically said, but what he said without saying it was, yeah, we'll just have to we're just going to have to bungle our way into a star. Somebody good is going to have to get great because we don't have the appetite to go out and either trade for or sign somebody that is clearly a great player. And Cub fans are not terribly happy about that.
And this is a team that is very clearly short of something necessary to get into and win a playoff series. And they also have their local TV streaming settled, unlike half the league or a third of the league or something like that. They have some advantages. They're on the cusp. It's not like they're the White Sox who are hoping to win 50 next year, and or the Twins who don't know how their local team's going to be broadcast or the revenue from that. These things are settled, relatively speaking, with the Cubs, and they don't want to take another step.
Yeah, I think one of he talked about, no, he didn't. Somebody in a write-up of it basically said, well, the Cubs are in a enviable position because they know their TV income, and very few other teams do, like the Yankees do and the Red Sox do and the Dodgers do. And the Cubs do. I think one of the things it points to is that revenue is not as good as they expected it was going to be. Like, I think Crane Kenny gave these huge projections to them about, we're going to get $7 a subscriber,
Right.
cable company, we're going to get $7 for every subscriber to cable. They're going to sell that stuff. And we know as he was signing the deals, they were coming in below what he thought because the Cubs were actually, they were behind the curve as far as getting huge TV rights. But they ended up being ahead of the curve in that at least they know they're getting some.
Yes.
Where those other teams aren't. So I think that's somewhat of an issue. But then they also they seem to kind of accidentally go over the lowest luxury tax threshold this year. They went over
So
by
how
serious
can we take them?
Right. It's like, okay.
As bookkeepers.
Yeah. Well, and that was the other thing. He's like, well, his deflection for all this was, well, we haven't really sat down and figured out what our budget is for next year yet. You haven't? You can't project that forward? All right. Were you waiting for the last of the 50-50 raffle money to roll in so you know how much you've got?
Well, what else are they doing here? They're not preparing for playoff games. Yeah.
I just took that as, well, Crane's still cooking the books in the back, and we don't know yet. He's got a lot of income to hide from the rest of the league and the IRS. And when Crane figures that out, then I'll get a phony baloney number that I'll leak that I can spend, and then I won't. I'll try to get a few free agents, and I won't sign any of them, and then I'll be like, we tried. Sorry. The other thing he did was he gave a very hard sell to Cody Bellinger and Scott Boras during the press conference. Asked, what will Cody's decision whether to opt in or opt out, how will that affect things? And he's like, why? We knew that if Cody had a good year, that he would have a lot of options, and he had a good year. He's going to have a lot of options. In other words, hey, Cody, go give it a shot. You're fine.
Right.
Somebody's going to pay you a lot of money. It doesn't have to be me. And we're like, well, he didn't really have that good a year. You might be, I'm sorry, Jed. You might actually be stuck with a good player. You might just have to keep him and then spend to add better players around him because he might just stay. He might leave, but he might stay. And it really feels like he's already in a position of, well, if Cody stays, that's really going to hamper what we can do.
Right.
But
that's what he was laying the ground
for. But it's also, we also know that if Cody leaves, he'll just find another excuse to hamper what they could do.
Right.
I mean, I always give Jed credit because Jed he's always like, before the first game of every homestand, he answers questions for the media. He doesn't hide. He shows up. He'll talk to people.
Right.
And he has two annoying habits. I know I took the transcript of the press conference and put it in the column and then made fun of him as I went along. He said the phrase, I think, 86 times in 30 minutes. I think. I know would be better every once in a while and mix that in. But the thing about Jed is he did it last year and he did it again this year. He correctly tells you what the problems are. Like this is not a guy who's not aware of what's wrong with his team. He explains it, but then he doesn't do anything about it. And so it's like, well, that's great. If you know you don't have any power, why didn't you add any power? If you knew your bullpen was thin, why didn't you improve? Why didn't you get more arms for the bullpen? It would almost be better if this stuff was like, well, we thought we were going to be fine there. He's basically like, oh no, we knew that was going to be a problem. We just didn't do anything about it. Like, oh, it's amazing. I can't believe you won 83 games again. But I did the math wrong. So I have great news for Cub fans. So 2 years ago, they made this huge deal out of the fact, when they were improving. Oh, here we go. We're building something. They touted the fact they had the 5th best record in the National League after the All-Star break. That was an exciting time for the Cubs. Last year, when they choked away the playoff thing at the end, they ended up with the 5th best record in the National League. And I actually made a nice design for a T-shirt. It's one of the flags that they hang for the World Series teams. And I put on there, Chicago Cubs, 2022, 2023, 5th best record in the National League in the second half. And that's great. And I did over the weekend before the season ended, I'm like, I wonder, they're got to be close to this again. And I had them 6th. But it turns out I did it wrong. They really, they three-peated.
No kidding.
5th best record in the National League in the second half, 3 straight years.
Oh my God.
Nobody can do that quite like our Cubs.
That's not an off-season championship. That's in-season.
Yeah, that flag really does need to fly next year. They got to be hoisting that thing up the flagpole on opening day. That'll be very exciting. Fans will get really, really great.
You should market this shirt for sure.
His new phrase, last year it was intelligent spending. And it's like, okay, I don't think you quite understand what intelligent spending is, but that's fine. This time, the new one, this is what he's proud of. Organizational positioning. Nobody is organizationally positioned like the Cubs. They're the envy of the rest of baseball because and I wondered, I was like, can you explain why you're so well positioned? Basically, here's what he says it is. They don't have any bad contracts. They do. They have Dansby's. I think it's kind of bad. Like he's not a bad player, but when you
no value.
When you sign the guy when you sign the 30-year-old shortstop, the 7-year thing, you figure he's going to be really good years 1, 2, and 3, kind of good in years 4 and 5. And we're just going to have to eat 6 and 7. Well, you're already year 3 and we haven't had the good year yet, and it's not happening. So that's not a great contract, but that's a good one. And they have a deep farm system, which fine, I guess it's deep, but the problem is there's nobody coming up that's really going to help. And then I think the third thing probably is we know we're getting a TV check. That's what's positioning. That's great.
Right.
It's like, I tell you what, look around this weekend when teams are still playing. Take a look at some of those teams and tell me you're better organizationally positioned than the Phillies and the Dodgers and the Padres. That's 3 just in your own league alone.
Right.
That you're miles behind. And you're not even, we saw part of the reason the Brewers were a 93-win team was the rest of the National League Central wasn't very good. They got to load up on that. And we saw them almost beat a Mets team that isn't very good. So it's not like there's this one juggernaut in your division you couldn't catch.
Right.
They're just okay. And you still couldn't beat them. And you haven't been able to beat them for quite a while. So
maybe that's another reason they're well positioned. Because they're in position to beat the team that isn't very good, that keeps winning anyway.
Yeah. Oh, well. But at least he let Craig fire 3 coaches.
Right.
That'll fix everything now. So that's good. Bring back the same team, 3 new. We were a first base coach, a bullpen coach, and one of the hitting. And the strength and conditioning team all got wiped out. We're going to get new. Oh. They're going to get some. They're going to subscribe to Beachbody On Demand and just let the guys let the guys pick a few workouts. It'll be great.
Some videos.
All right.
Okay, Andy.
Well, once again, we can watch a lot of fun baseball over the weekend, and at least for me, none of my teams, my one team, they're not involved. Takes the pressure off.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm well rested. When it comes to the Cubs playing big games, I'm very well rested. They haven't had one since maybe August of 2019.
Right.
That might have been the last truly big game they played, because I'm not going to count the stupid COVID 2-game playoff tour against the Marlins. It's been a long time, and they don't seem to want to put any stress on me, so that's great. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll let some of these games play out, and then we can make fun of those.
Okay,
right.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Dave.
Many of us have herpes.
No, I thought it generally sucked. I didn't think it was a specific suck. I thought it was like an all-encompassing type of suck. So, we're going to try and rectify that, but for right now, I'm going to be pretty pissed about it.
It's fitting. It's got to be done with one of the best games of all time. Just unbelievable. Got to congratulate the Dolan family.
Sean, my podcast co-host Andy, you were his favorite player growing up.
Oh, thank you so much. Awesome.